Across America, the night hides more than it reveals. In small towns, along forgotten highways, deep in abandoned places, and dark forests. There are stories people don't share in the daylight. Scary, creepy, chilling, disturbing, terrifying. These are the shadows that follow us home. I'm Mr. NightDread, and here I bring you haunting stories from the United States. Tales of the paranormal, the unexplainable, the deeply unsettling. If you dare step into the dark with me, subscribe, like, and keep your light close. You're going to need it. Tonight's story begins with 4 new creepy and disturbing, true Appalachian Mountain horror stories. It was past midnight when I first heard it, my name, carried through the cold night air. At first, I thought it was just the wind, tossing my own thoughts back at me. But then, it came again, clear, deliberate. Tom, Tom. I froze. The firelight danced across the trees, but there was no one there, and the woods had gone completely quiet. I'd been camping alone for a hunting trip. Late fall in the Appalachians is beautiful, but unforgiving. Cold enough to sting your skin, and quiet enough that every sound feels magnified. The stream near my campsite had gone silent. The only movement, the occasional flicker of my campfire. I double-checked my rifle. It felt heavy in my hands, but when I looked closer, it wasn't loaded. I could have sworn I left it ready that morning, alone, miles from the nearest road. That's when I noticed something strange. The stillness wasn't just quiet, it was watching. And then I heard it again, closer this time. My name, spoken in a voice that wasn't mine. I told myself it was just an echo. Maybe a deer knocking branches, maybe my mind playing tricks. But then came the third call, and it was unmistakably deliberate. I tried my flashlight. The beam faltered, then died completely. My heart was pounding, the fire barely holding against the darkness, and I could feel movement just at the edge of the light. Between the trees, something tall, waiting. And the voices, they kept circling, whispering my name in tones that felt almost familiar, too familiar. I backed up, fumbling for my unloaded rifle, every step loud on the dry leaves. Then I realized I wasn't moving away from it. It was moving around me. The whispers came from behind, from the left, from the tree line. A shape appeared briefly in the firelight, tall, still, watching, and then gone, as if it had never been there at all. My flashlight flickered back just for a second, and all I saw was the empty tree line. But the feeling of being surrounded never left. I ran, out of the firelight, out of the camp. Through the dark forest I went, stumbling over roots, scraping through brambles, not daring to look back. My backpack, my gear, everything was left behind. I didn't stop running, not until the first hint of dawn touched the treetops. Later, when rangers went to investigate, they found nothing. No footprints, no camp, no sign that anyone had been there at all. I've never gone into those woods alone again. And if you're ever out in the Appalachians, deep in the mountains, and you hear someone or something call your name, don't answer. Just don't. I stumbled onto a cabin that shouldn't have been there. The sun was dipping below the ridge, and I realized the path I thought was a shortcut had disappeared entirely. No road, no trail, just thick trees pressing in from every side. Then I saw it. Faint light flickering behind what looked like an old log cabin, tucked in a small clearing that couldn't possibly exist. I froze. How did I even find this place? I was on a college road trip through Virginia trying to cut back to the highway before dark. My car had gotten stuck on a narrow dirt path, so I decided to hike through the forest, thinking I'd reconnect with the road soon. The air was cool and damp, with that late fall smell of wet leaves and pine. There was no one around, no footprints, no tire tracks, nothing that suggested anyone had passed through in years. And yet, the cabin had light, almost as if it were waiting for me. I crept closer. The ground was untouched. No sign anyone had been near it recently. No power lines, no smoke, nothing that would explain how it was lit. The flicker came from a window covered with old wooden slats, just enough for the glow to escape in short bursts. I knocked on the door, softly at first, then louder. No answer. Silence. But inside, I heard something. A shuffle. Faint and irregular, like someone moving around just beyond reach. I leaned close to the crack in the door, and what I saw, or thought I saw, was impossible. The cabin was empty. Bare walls, no furniture, nothing. Heart pounding, I stepped back, trying to make sense of it. Then the door. It creaked open, slowly, on its own. I peered inside. The floorboards were bare, the walls old but intact. And then my eyes landed on it. A single wooden chair, facing the wall. No one in it. No one else in the cabin. Just that chair, and the faint sound of scraping wood against the floor. I froze. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I had imagined it. Then it moved, backward, inch by inch, as if someone had just stood up. I didn't wait to find out who or what it was. I turned and ran, branches slapping my face, roots clawing at my shoes. Every step felt wrong, like the forest was shifting behind me. And then, suddenly, I was back on a dirt road. My GPS said I had been miles off any trail. Deep in the woods where no roads existed, I could still hear it. That chair, sliding across the floor, carried on the wind. I went back a week later with friends, thinking maybe it had been an abandoned cabin someone was using. But it was gone, no trace. Just the same empty clearing and the same quiet forest. I don't know what I found that evening. I don't know if it was real, but sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I can still hear that chair dragging across the floor, as if someone or something was still there, waiting. The last thing he left behind was a recording, and the sound on it still keeps me up at night. I was volunteering with park rangers, searching for a missing hiker. We were combing a section of trail, thick forest on every side, late summer heat hanging in the air. The forest seemed heavier that day, quiet, but not peaceful. We found his tent abandoned, just off a narrow hiking path. Everything was neatly folded, like he'd left on purpose, but there was no sign of him. Inside his backpack, pressed into a corner, was a small recorder. The battery was almost dead, but enough for us to play it back. I remember holding it, feeling the weight of someone else's panic, before even pressing play. At first, the recording was normal, the hiker's voice, calm, describing the trail, the sights, even joking about bears or snakes. But then, the tone shifted. "I hear them," he whispered. "They're following me. I can hear them walking behind me." The sound of footsteps echoed at the microphone, heavy, deliberate, though he was clearly alone. My stomach dropped. The forest outside the tent seemed to hold its breath. Each entry grew more frantic. The voice trembled, whispers overlapping. The footsteps multiplied, like someone or something was circling him. Then, the most disturbing part. His own voice began to repeat phrases he was saying, almost simultaneously, overlapping, like an echo, but more alive. The breathing accelerated, uneven, as if someone had sprinted behind him. And finally, a scream. Short, sharp, ends in static. The recording ended. I sat there in the clearing, the forest pressing in from all sides, the tent empty, no footprints, nothing. Rangers confiscated the recorder, but the memory, the sound, it stayed with me. I can still hear the overlapping voice when I close my eyes, the way it repeats exactly what I say, like it's just behind me, walking along the trail. The hiker's body was never found. We searched for weeks, every mile of the trail, every ravine and ridge. Nothing, just that recorder and the echo it left in my mind. Sometimes, when I walk the trails in Blue Ridge, I swear I hear my own voice whispering from behind me, and I know for a moment the forest hasn't finished listening. I drove down a road I'd taken 100 times before, but that night, it didn't lead anywhere. My headlights caught the familiar curves, the bends I could drive in my sleep, after years on the same route. And yet, something was off. The road signs were gone. The mile markers that always counted down toward the next town, missing. Even my GPS froze, its screen flickering between directions that made no sense. I gripped the wheel harder, trying to convince myself I'd just missed a turn, but the road kept stretching on, as if it had no end. I was on a delivery route, cutting through rural Appalachia in the dead of night. Normally, that stretch is quiet, lined with pine trees and the occasional porch light from a farmhouse. But that night, it felt heavier, like the forest was leaning in, closing around the highway. I kept passing the same broken-down billboard, rusted frame, peeling paint. A faded ad for a gas station that had shut down years ago. The first time, I brushed it off. The second time, my chest tightened. By the third, I knew something was wrong. My fuel gauge hadn't moved in miles, stuck at half a tank, and the radio, usually nothing but static out here, came alive just once, with what sounded like coordinates. Faint, broken, a whisper so soft, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. The asphalt narrowed, the yellow lines faded, until I wasn't even sure I was on pavement anymore. The GPS insisted I was still on the highway, but my headlights revealed gravel, dirt, shadows closing in from either side. Every sound felt amplified. My breathing, the soft whine of the engine, the crunch of tires on loose stone. It was the kind of silence that made your own heartbeat sound too loud, like it didn't belong there. I slowed down, leaning forward in my seat, as though squinting into the dark would somehow bring back the road I knew. That's when I saw them, figures standing in the road ahead, tall, still, completely motionless. I braked hard, expecting them to scatter like deer caught in the lights. But when I blinked, when I looked again, they were gone. The road stretched out empty, nothing but shadows. My GPS went black, no signal, no map, just a dead screen. And when I glanced at the fuel gauge again, my stomach dropped. It hadn't moved at all, like I hadn't gone anywhere, like I'd been stuck in the same mile of road for hours. Then the road simply ended. Ahead of me was nothing, not trees, not a bend, just black, a void, swallowing the beams of my headlights like light falling into deep water. My chest tightened, panic surged. I slammed the truck into reverse, the tires spitting gravel, the engine roaring louder than I'd ever heard it. I don't even remember steering. I just remember the sudden burst of sunlight, orange and pink, bleeding over the ridges. As my truck shot out onto a normal highway, a highway that hadn't been there seconds before. By the time I pulled over, I was shaking so badly I could barely shut off the ignition. I asked locals the next morning about that stretch of road, the narrowing highway, the old billboard, the forest pressing in. They gave me strange looks and told me the same thing. That road doesn't exist, not anymore. They said years ago, part of the highway had been rerouted after a collapse. The section I described, buried, abandoned, forgotten, no record on any map. I haven't driven through Appalachia at night since, because some roads don't lead anywhere human, and sometimes the place you know best can vanish in an instant, leaving you with nothing but dark trees and the memory of headlights pointing into a void. You've been listening to Mr. NightDread, where true horror lives in the shadows. If this story left you uneasy, subscribe and stay for the next one, if you dare.